Well, here we are. I'm Tom Osman, and this is Whatever Comes Next, the podcast where I explore the world of underground and independent music making. And on today's episode, I am joined for the second time on this show by Veilburner, who I interviewed back episode 42, something like that, I want to say, for their previous album. And we're here to talk about their eighth record together, Longing for Triumph, Reeking of Tragedy. Veilburner are a band that are very close to my heart. I interviewed them and reviewed them for the first time, I want to say back in about 2021, maybe even earlier than that, actually, for Blessed Altazine. And I think I interviewed them 3 times for Blessed Altazine via email. I think I've reviewed almost every one of their albums since about album 4. I absolutely adore this band. I think they're one of the most fascinating and creative and unusual extreme metal bands around. You can see even I have this beautiful Veilburner coffin, which has various different goodies inside it, up on my shelf over there. So it was great to get a chance to talk to the guys again. When I first interviewed them, I only knew them by their mysterious masked personas. But in the last time when I interviewed them, I got to actually see them in person and interview them in, as the actual people behind the masks. So for the purposes of this podcast, I know them as Chris and Dave. So I'm very grateful to the both of them for coming back to talk to me a second time as we get into talking about the album, the music, the lore, the kind of mythology and the story that Chris has been creating and the music that Dave's been creating. We talk about their creative processes, about what it's like for them working together over all these years. And there is an extended version of this interview, because we do talk together for quite some time, that you can check out on Patreon, which I will link to, where we get into some extended discussions, including a whole bunch of conversations about various different movies, like Holy Mountain and Mandy, which, as I say, you can check out on Patreon. But there is plenty for us to discuss here, so let's get right into it. I'm going to play a track from the latest record, which is coming out this Friday on Transcending Obscurity Records. You can go and pre-order it from the label. There are all kinds of cool editions of it. You can get all kinds of merch as well relating to the album. You should definitely go check that out. There are several songs already available to listen to. I'm going to play one of them at the end of the interview with a little clip coming up right now. You can follow Veilburner on Facebook and Instagram, and I think that's just about it. You can follow me on all social media at Tom Osman Sounds. You can go to my website, tomosmansounds.com, to check out my music. I'm still not on Ampwall, but I really will be there soon. And that is that. So, Dave and Chris, who are Veilburner, take it away. Here once again to talk about the latest Veilburner record. It's another great record. I've been enjoying listening to it a lot. I remember from last time that we spoke, and maybe I sort of got this impression before, you tend to be a few steps ahead in terms of what you're making. So when was the writing process and the recording process for this latest record?
For the music, it was during the COVID-19 lockdown. I worked on this album. This was pretty much my, project during the entire COVID-19 lockdown. And after I finished it up and then the world started opening up again, people started going out, I had music done. And then that was the point where I sent it over to you, Chris. And then you took it from there as far as the lyrics and vocals and everything else. Is that how you remember it, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, we were so far ahead. I think that's about right. And this one took me longer to do just because Seven kind of burned me out, the previous album. And got to make sure things don't seem too convoluted then also with how long this concept's going, even though it's altered with certain stories or premises, it still is all tied together. So it's like getting near the end where do I still need to tell a little more, or can I sum it up? So eight felt like this album kind of is that confrontation, and it gives you sort of an idea. With nine, will definitely just the title alone will kind of tell you if it was triumph or tragedy, and where that will go. So just trying to keep the story together while not repeating the same thing, or adding way too much to it that isn't really depth and just nonsense. So
Yeah. And I want to get back into some aspects of the sonic qualities of the album and the music, but as we're sort of touching on the themes of it, the so you've, as you mentioned, this is number eight. The number eight itself has got that association with the symbol of infinity. You've got references to Ouroboros, and you've got that kind of circular aspect to the way that the album starts and ends. You've got this musical theme that repeats between the two of them. So evidently there is this, and you can see in the artwork as well, there's certain aspects of circularity and infinity that you're exploring on this album. So can you say a bit more about the concept of what's going on for this record?
yeah, so this carries through with six was when it kind of entered into the abyss, and the thelemic kind of ideas, but also some other philosophies and mysticisms that are involved with it, and my own kind of approach to that path. And it essentially is the Ouroboros, for me, represents kind of Leviathan, and sort of like that chain that you have to break. So it's these two beings, and the character, or the character and two beings, or they're all one, or they three, kind of dealing with this dilemma. Or are the characters actually the shadows? Are they actually, the concept of Karanzan? So there's a lot of psychological play onto it that allows the listener, if they want to get that involved with it, to kind of make it up for themselves. Like, do these two characters exist outside of this one individual? Are they all voices? Are they actually, the entity? Are there more than two? So it just plays onto that, and that whole confrontation. And most people, especially, any of the books that you read, they always make it seem like they've, gained that enlightenment. They've reached that illumination. They never really go into anyone who's failed. And there's very little on that. So I really want to try to explore that theme, and what it means for someone who's on a path, because with every triumph there has to be failure also. So but you never really hear about that. So that's where this kind of goes and explores, with that human experience, but also that spiritual experience.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that I want to sort of explore from what you said there, but to go back to Dave for a minute, thinking about the sounds that you created. One of the things that I noticed, because I obviously you've got a Veilburner sound, but I'm always sort of curious from one record to the next to hear what seemed to me to be different kind of elements. And from you having mentioned the fact that you wrote this during the pandemic, one of the things that kind of surprises me is there are actually parts, melodies on this album that I found to be quite kind of positive or even summery in sound, if that doesn't sound too crazy for a Veilburner record. Like, I'm thinking of halfway through Pestilent Niche, there's this lead work that sounds quite kind of positive in a way, I would say. And also as well at the end of the last track, you've got this progression. And I was trying to think, what does this remind me of? And it reminds me a little bit of Godflesh or Jesu, but actually like in a positive way. Like, I know that Godflesh is often associated with being very grim, but there was something kind of almost optimistic in that. I'm wondering if that is a feeling that you would recognize from any of that music.
Yeah, I picked up on exactly that thing too. And Pestilent Niche, Chris, is that what's that? That's the title for which track? Because I
Song
know
two.
that song too. Yeah, I
Yeah.
know the songs by their album. Because when I write them, I don't assign them a name. I just assign them like an album number and then the track position. So that would be 8.2. When you're talking about the lead work, yeah, I noticed again lately. I've been trying, like, whenever I write a lead, like I want it to. I obviously have my influences for lead work, and I think I might have mentioned before, one of my biggest influences is Alex Skolnick. from Testament. Like I always loved his leads because he's one of the few people who you could listen to a lead and like the lead sticks in your head. Like you don't normally walk away from a song humming or whistling a lead, but his were so melodic and so blended in with the song so cohesively that, and they're so catchy that, you can't help like but walk away from a Testament song with an Alex Skolnick lead, like kind of lingering in your head. And so that's kind of what I try to model my leads after, especially, more so lately. I want to make sure that they're not just there, but they play an important role in a song. They blend in with the melody that's playing in the background, the riff that's playing in the background, which is kind of when you think about how sort of unusual our riff writing and our effects and everything else is, it would seem kind of weird that we would for the leads we're kind of taking a more traditional approach or a more melodic approach. But that's kind of intentional because we have so much weirdness going on that it's a way for me to sort of provide that juxtaposition against the weirdness. There's this like sort of uplifting normalcy and traditional melody, as an aspect to our music too. So, they play off each other. People are going to get enough. People get enough weirdness. I like to kind of regroup and bring people back to traditional music once in a while. So in a song flow, you might get weirdness, and then you might get like this kind of traditional lead. Throughout an album, you might get a lot of really intense songs, and then you might get a song like song 6 that is more that might be taken more in the sense of like a traditional like ballad type of song that you might
Yeah, that was one I was going to
in the
mention as well, because I thought that one, it's like almost sort of like a classic rock solo that fades out on that
yeah.
track.
Because I think music works best when there's balance. I love extremity, but in another sense, I'm writing stuff that's very I want the albums to have like a traditional flow, like you would hear from like an '80s Metallica album, where you have like a real strong, high energy opener, and then like a big anthemic, followed by like a big anthemic, like a title track, and then the song 3 would be would be on a kind of cruise control, and then 4 might be like a ballad type situation. I like when things it's not just blasting all the way through. It's not just weirdness all the way through. I like to try and like balance things so that it has a traditional flow, but within the songs, you have that's where you have your experimentation is with the sound palette. But everything else is it's kind of traditional and it's by design.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm glad that I was picking up on something that was intentional there. That's a very interesting insight. So one thing I was wondering then, Chris, from your point of view, with the themes and the concepts and the lore of Veilburner that you've been building up so sort of carefully, and it has all this very specific structure to it. I don't remember if I asked you this before, but on this record or in general, how much does the music that Dave sends you influence the way that you kind of develop your story for the concept of the record?
No, it's the core. So like in Pestilent Niche, right before the solo, I'm almost certain the line is this not the center of the threshold? And so if you're listening to that and someone who might understand that or interpret it away, that music, that solo might tell you, it might give you something of, okay, if is this not center of the threshold? You have this nice classical solo playing in something that's not all discordant and weird and drippy. It's like, is this a good thing or is it a bad thing? So I try to use the music because I mean at the core that's what's carrying this whole story. So but I try to use clashing vocal phrases sometimes, um rather than just going along with a blast. I might try to pause things, do different vocal cadences just because I do want it to be a little disorienting because of the story, but it's definitely a play with the music. It's constantly a play with the music. And sometimes it takes me longer to feel something out, to know where the story should go per se at that certain song. And then there's other times the very first listen, I hear the song, I either had lyrics written ahead of time or something just comes right to me. It usually seems 2 songs on the album, just it's like that, and they're usually done in a day. It just comes natural, and then those two kind of carry forward the rest of the album, where I can give and take and plot the rest of it. Because again, I'm trying not to become convoluted, so it's definitely nearing its end on the whole first concept. The idea will be come album 11, it's going to be kind of a new story.
So, in terms of the life cycle of Veilburner so far, you've been working together for over 10 years. To what extent do the two of you surprise each other at this point?
I'm really not. The only thing I'm surprised at is the rate that he is able to write. Now, this last go around, like he's still finishing 10. Usually we've been on this schedule, but life and, you know, that law of diminishing return comes in too. Like, not only do you want the listener to be compelled by it, but I want to be compelled by it. So I tried to give myself a break to make sure things still feel fresh and we're not going back to that same basket, like in doing the same tripes. But what I've heard of each future album, I'm always like, Jesus, I don't know where he's pulling this from. He always has a vision for the music. He's always one step ahead. He has really catchy melodies. It just I've known that from him since I've known him 20 years. He was always the guy that was able to go into a band and give a whole song over to the rest of the band to try to construct and pull ideas from. So nothing really surprised me there. I'm just surprised 80 or 90 songs in that I feel like we're still putting out solid stuff and stuff that we enjoy, because at the end of the day, that's what matters to me most is that I enjoy it and I very much enjoy it. And if the listener does, and that's great. But ultimately, I'm just glad he keeps going, hey, I'm writing more music. So that's the greatest compliment because I know that I'm doing something right, and I would think the same for him. Like we're not sick of each other. So
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely a plus. And again, that's also a little bit by design because we don't have like a lot of bands they get burned out on each other with the constantly rehearsing. It's like they're always it's like they're like married. It's like being married to four different people usually. And then when you go on the road and you're in such close quarters, that takes a heavy toll on personal relationships. And so it's not surprising you see a lot or you hear of a lot of bands just like burning out, getting sick of each other, quit, leaving bands, getting into these wars in the press with, flinging mud at each other. It's just like, well, that just kind of living that lifestyle where you're always on the road together in close quarters and under these high stress situations with performing and everything. It takes a toll on personal relationships. And that's something that from the very beginning, this was designed to kind of sidestep by sheer fact of it being, we don't have that live component. We know this isn't our livelihood. We have our jobs and careers. We want this to be a sanctuary where we can, be creative, but not have it be a high stress situation. And that what I think one of the things that the main thing that contributes to the longevity. I think if we were in close quarters touring and everything, we'd probably end up just like a lot of other bands, maybe be at each other's throats at this point and just be totally sick of each other. But we keep it tempered and we enjoy each other's. We get like we just got together to do photos last month, and again, it was a great outing. We had a great time, getting photos for album 8, and then sent them off to Canal, and then we had lunch and everything. But again, it's a very low stress situation, and we keep it that way. And we're always and whenever we're talking about whenever Chris is talking about the music or I'm talking about the lyrics or the art and everything, we understand that we're in each other's houses, sort of in a figurative way, and we want to be as respectful as possible. Um, when Chris talks to me about the music, he make sure it's understood that I'm in charge. He might have an idea, but it's just, that's my area. And then I try and do the same with him when it comes to the lyrics, act like a guest in each other's house and keep things cordial and respectful. And I think that's why we have such a great working relationship. And I don't ever want that to to changing or go sour because, like I said, it's not a job, so there's no reason to be stressed over it.
Yeah. Having brought up the recent photo shoot, so you've always got these interesting, striking masks and costumes, and we talked a bit about the kind of where you were getting some of your masks from last time round. And so I see with a couple of the pictures that you've posted with one of you holding up this decapitated head, which I kind of guess is a callback to the previous album. What can you tell me about the latest masks and costumes that you've got for album number 8?
Yeah, Chris, where did you get those? Those
The guy
the ones
is
that we wear.
Yeah, the guy, I don't know his real name, but the store is Von Jekyll, Von Jekyll Art, and he does different masks. So I came across them, showed it to Dave, we thought it would be good, and we were trying to find something that we can use for a few runs or period, and just kind of change the wardrobe around it. Just because again you're everyone's jumping on the mask train, everyone wants to do it. I've said it a million times now. Once Behemoth enters that arena, it's like they have a very large budget that they are going to look amazing with. We do not have that large budget, so we're always it becomes this, everyone's doing it. Are we going to start looking like, and as I've always said, Ollie's bargain market, And we want to try to ride that balance and still keep that lore going of not just being Chris and Dave. So these masks have worked. We changed colors each album. So this album we use the blue for 8, and you'll just notice that with 7 we use brown. So we'll do that until either we want to start playing in different masks again, or wherever it takes us in the coming story. But I think we'll be sticking with these for a little while, if not,
Yeah.
period.
Yeah, the way I've been thinking about it, the way I've been kind of framing it in my mind is that for like album 7, 8, and at least 9, we do have the same character masks and costumes, but we're just doing like a palette swap. Like if you're familiar with like the Mortal Kombat game series, you have those ninjas like Sub-Zero and Scorpion. It's like the same character, but just in a different color of
Yeah, I remember.
costume accent. So it's like we're kind of going through color palette swaps with the same, with the same general character look. So um, that's what's kind of happening there for the next for this run of albums.
And so, like, in terms of what you use for your photo shoots, how much are you kind of repurposing stuff that you've got, like beyond just the masks, but like the outfits that you've got? Like, because presumably you've sort of accumulated a fair amount of costumes over the years. What's in the wardrobe that's kind of available for Veilburner?
Wow, at this point, I'd say we've between getting costumes and masks for this project, and also just for me and my wife for different Halloween parties and things, like I could open a costume store at this point as far as all the stuff that I have, like, collected in a closet or in boxes, either in my room or in the basement. It's so, and plus with all the different kind of masks that I got for, display around the room and stuff. It's become a full blown like second hobby in and of itself, is collecting, these costumes and masks.
And for you, Chris?
Yeah, I have a lot of black gowns now for, any rituals I want to do, or, any Halloween get-ups. I always am dressed up pretty nice for the neighborhood we're in. It's actually, for a while there were no kids where we were living, and now it looks like, John Carpenter's Halloween. I mean, there's kids everywhere. So I usually am adorning something Veilburner. Maybe those kids are the first ones that see the next mask, see how much it affects them, or the parents, they walk up, they're like, what the hell is this? I'm like, all right, well, that sells, so
Yeah,
we'll
that's pretty
stick with
cool
it.
to have that you can like you can test it, the testing audience.
Yeah.
And on the sticking on the visual side of things, so I remember we spoke about, now I'm probably going to mispronounce her name, but Luciana Nedelia, who did your.
Yeah.
Now, if I remember this correctly, you chose a painting that she'd already done for the last record, but for this one, she actually designed it for you directly, or have I got that
This
wrong?
is this is the same. She just had this one, so it really fit with the theme. Her art really resonates with me. Showed Dave, it seems to also resonate with him with what we're going for. Album 9, I am talking with her to do something original. So I have one more song to finish lyrically, and once that's done, I was going to send her the lyrics, give her kind of my idea. I wanted to talk to Dave with that and kind of put our ideas together with the lyrics to her and see what she can sketch up. Because fortunately for us, it seems like that she's getting popular, which is great for her. But everyone seems to choose her black and whites and your more lo-fi stuff, and we're still reaping those benefits of the awesome color work that she does. I mean, it's just she's I saw her work and it just resonated. Almost everything she does, just the colors, the way she goes about it, the design, it's really good stuff. So I think it really is it's better than the way that I can portray Veilburner and what art I can do at this point. So I definitely trust her abilities and her vision.
Yeah, it's a very, very cool cover. I was going to ask you, but I mean, I guess this is really a question for her, if there was any significance to the fact that Death was back to front on his horse.
Yeah, I can ask her. I don't know. I forget what the actual title of it's Death Spinning Its Wheel. That is the title of the actual art that she sold us.
Yeah.
But I told her about the concept because since she already came up with it, she said, "Yeah, your concept and everything, it totally matches. That works. That's good."
Yeah, I guess that
So
was kind of part of the
I
reason
thought,
why I thought that she'd done it for you, because I thought, like, well, this just completely fits to the concept.
like I said, it's weird. Things just align, and for the duality of decapitation and wisdom, I saw that art, and I was like, we have to that was the sum of all my dreams.
Yeah.
If I could have drawn it myself, that's what it would have been. So and again, the color work, just you don't typically see that in extreme metal, black metal, death metal. It's usually more grim or more barbaric or more gory, and this I feel like it says more. It
Yeah.
tells you more.
Yeah. No, I think you're totally right. It's like, obviously, there are aspects of it that are very macabre, but like you say, it's colorful as well. So maybe kind of like back to Dave's point about looking for those contrasts in the music, like it gives you quite a rich picture and not a sort of sense. It's not like some kind of old school Dark Throne record where you're like, okay, like I see what the vibe is here. Like it gives you a few things to think about.
Yeah, I think if we were just a death metal, if we fit into a genre and we were aiming to fit into a genre and be a specific kind of band, to go into those typical stereotypes and tropes of the images and having them up on the wall amongst the other ones and other albums, I think that's fine. But I I really feel like Emperor, for example. I've talked to many people that look like they have no want in wanting to listen to any sort of metal, and here they have Emperor's whole discography. They love them. I I like that, and a lot of their artwork and stuff, especially the later stuff, it pops out to you. And I feel like you know, if I see that on a wall or I see that in a store, I'm going to be more drawn to that because of the artwork. Because I feel like artwork's the most important, and I've turned down listening to a lot of bands because the artwork just it didn't connect with me,
Yeah,
and that's unfortunate because you go back and you listen to the album, you're like, this is a great album, but the only thing holding me back was the art. So
it makes a lot of sense. I wanted to ask you a bit both about some of the things that are in your rooms, which I didn't do last time round, but I was kind of fascinated by. So, Dave, at the very start, we talked a little bit about your model there with the doctor's mask, but something else I'm curious about behind that. I've seen this kind of thing before, but what is that? It's some kind of mirror, but it's some strange kind of mirror. What is the story with that?
Oh, do you mean the one up here or the one over there behind the doctor?
Behind the doctor.
The one behind the doctor is that mirror is not a traditional mirror. It's like it's a convex mirror. So when you look into it, it kind of It's like looking at something filmed through a fisheye lens.
Yeah, I feel like it's the kind of thing you get at the top of a store, so they can make sure people aren't stealing things around different corners of the room.
Yeah, I actually found that you would to look at it, you would think it came from like some, store selling art and stuff. That actually, if I remember that one, that came from Home Depot, which is like a big box hardware store here in the U.S.
Yeah.
I was there looking for something else, and I just was wandering through their home goods section and saw that. I'm like, that is really kind of a fancy, artsy mirror for like, a traditional hardware store. I like it, and I'm gonna get it for my room. Um, so that's really the only story behind that. Is it caught my eye? It was in the I found it in the most unlikely place.
Just underneath that, I think I see fins. Is this like a whale or some other kind of aquatic creature that's next to the doctor?
Oh, that's actually the if you looked at um our photos from like we had that head on that stick,
Yeah.
and that's that. I'll grab it for you and show it to you again. We used it a lot on let me go get it. I don't know if my cord will reach all the way over here, so let me just take this off a second. I'll
Yeah, no
grab it.
worries. You don't want to accidentally pull your computer off the desk. Ah, I see. Everything's very different once you turn it around. Okay.
Yeah,
Ah, isn't she
this was the
lovely?
head on a pike, and I still haven't taken it off the let me turn it on real quick. Yeah, I still haven't
Cool.
taken it off the styrofoam um base head yet, and I still have the lights in place from when we did the photo session. But
Oh,
yeah,
of course, that makes sense because now I look at the picture and I see the lights. Yeah, like you
yep.
can't really tell from the picture that there are lights coming out of it, but that makes sense. Otherwise, it wouldn't be light
hmm
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think what happened, the way it got captured on film, it looked like when we were looking at the pictures afterwards, it did kind of look a little artificial, like we had just manually inserted the color in the eyes, but that actually is light. I might have enhanced it a little bit
Mm,
when I was doing like the photo effects for the publicity photos. So I wanted to suck all the color out except for what was blue. So
yeah.
they're black and white photos, but you can see the blue, arm and leg wraps, and then the blue eyes coming out of the head. But yeah, the way I did the effects, I can understand people would think it's artificial, but no, we went through the process and we actually installed lights and had it lit up, shining blue in that cave we were kind of huddled in.
Yeah.
So now we first got this mask. This is actually the character head we used back on albums 4 and 5. So we were kind of bringing that character back into the fold. And this was from this. There was an, I don't know if I told you this story. I know I told one of the other podcasters a story behind this mask, but we were for album 4 while Chris was writing this story about this character, who was kind of like a third character in addition to our two main characters. There was a company in his hometown called Shattered Effects. And when Chris was writing sort of his story, this company at the exact same time was that without Chris and these people even knowing each other or knowing about each other, they were writing or they were actually making this character's look. Um, and then it was when we were looking for a way to visually represent this character that we started going online looking for masks. What would this character look like? And then I thought this was a great way to portray the character that Chris created, because he still looks human, but he's got scars, and that it sort of fit with the whole disease. Chris had said that this character had. So he looks human, like he's got monstrous features, but he still looks human. It's not an over the top, demonic looking thing. It's kind of a tragic, subtle. He's got this
Yeah.
tragic, this sort of like tragic human, appearance, which really fit the vibe of the cover. It was just a bingo. And then I went to buy it. And then when I saw on the company's website where they were located, and they were located in Mountjoy, which is PA, which is the town Chris was living in at the time. And I'm like, wait a minute. And it was one of their new designs that they had just released. So that's when I put two and two together, and I was like, Chris, this character, the exact same time you were writing for, you know, kind of coming up with him, somebody in your town was like coming up with his look, and you guys didn't even know each other. Like how's that for like weird like synchronicity? So I always thought that was a sort of like a great little happy accident.
Yeah.
And or some sort of weird, cosmic synchronicity sort of experience. So yeah, I mean, at that point we had to go with the character because it just seemed so, so perfect the way everything kind of lined up. So that's the
And
story behind him.
yeah, that's cool. And I'm wondering, from a couple of things that you said there, sort of that dimension of it being humanoid and monstrous, it makes me think just what popped into my head. I was thinking about the movie Elephant Man by David Lynch. And obviously, you've got this character who is part of the whole concept of the story is that this is this grotesque character who is terribly prejudiced against because of his appearance, but he's a very empathetic, sympathetic character. And I suppose I'm now wondering, Chris, I hadn't really thought about it before, but for you, through the cycle and the story with Veilburner and this visual aspect to it, and you have these characters, whether they are real or they're imagined, and they have this kind of grotesque dimension to them, but you're very much in the characters. How much do you find on a sort of emotional level that you're considering the balance between what is horrific and what is kind of sympathetic?
I think to a degree, uh, art really reflects life, and I think that's why this whole abyss theme has kind of extended itself through six, and it's been slow through up to eight, and the confrontations and the back and forth and the rituals, and it ultimately kind of reflects my life. I've been kind of just hanging out in the abyss for a little while here, and it ultimately just you have your ups and downs, and the character really came about uh, due to a period of time in my life where my wife was going through some struggles with mental health, and I didn't want to always just, I believe like psychology and mysticism to me kind of go hand in hand. You can tie a lot of the stuff together, and I just always wanted to explore more of that. So it was a way to be able to bring this character to life, and I always imagined in the beginning that it was this character and these two beings representing us. But as the process came along and the writing came, I started realizing, well, this character for me is actually the sum of the story, and it's like these beings, they're there, but their voices, and again, it could be, that element of Karanzan or demons, or however you want to listen to it, read the lyrics and take it. But that's the approach. And throughout it, it always seems like it weaves back out to being more like they're these real individuals. Um, and I don't mind saying let the listener decide, let you decide, because ultimately where I want to take this is whenever we're old and retired and can't do this anymore, I want to be able to write. And a lot of the stuff has been written in kind of a Kabbalistic aspect where you can take the songs and move them around on the path or use them like tarot, and you'd be able to do that for path work. So, but that's so far down the line. And again, with all that stuff, you have your ups and downs, and uh, it seems like there's more downs and ups in this story as of late, but I think there might be some redeeming qualities coming. So there's always hope.
Yeah, well, there's also hope for you thematically if Dave comes up with more summary riffs and leads.
Yeah, yeah, as long as he keeps doing it, it reminds me of that the Faith No More song that came out, that video that they did in a retirement home. That's kind of what always pops up in my head. Because he's older than me, so in his retire, if he's already churning out this much music working, I'm like, dude, I'm gonna have to retire early. I'm gonna have to rob some banks or something so that I can keep up with you. Because if he's retired and that's what he's doing is music and traveling, well, he's going to be ahead of me. He's going to be dead before I even have half the ones finished. So he'll be posthumous probably with the rate he'll be able to write.
I'll admit that I've slowed. Like I've been waiting for it to happen, but it's finally happening. I'm slowing down. Like the output is like right now I'm working on the music for what will be album 10,
Yeah.
and it's it started with album 9. Like usually albums 1 through 8, like I cranked out in like 9 months on average. Um, album 9, I noticed took me about, I want to say, maybe 12 months, 13 months. And now like we're going on month for album 10, we're going on month 15 or 16. And I'm on like song 7. So yeah, I finally hit that point where, the output's going to slow down. And that happens, to everybody over the course of a musician's, creative lifespan. It seems like they crank out their first X number of albums, back to back, and then things start spacing out, the space between the albums starts getting longer and longer because, and it makes sense, it's like you try to write in a way that is consistent. You want to keep your core sound, but you don't just want to keep spitting out the same album over and over again. You want to
Yeah.
make sure each album has its own identity, but it's true to the sound you created. So I think in another interview, I came up with this analogy of like a tightrope walk, where you have like a tightrope walker, and they're trying to balance, and musicians trying to balance between those two things I just mentioned. They don't want to go too far in either direction, or the thing it'll fall apart. It'll crash and burn. But every step you take, it's almost like that tightrope is getting thinner, because you have such every album you write, there's a bigger back catalog you have to take into consideration, and every idea you got to run through. Does this sound too much like something that I did in one of the older albums?
Yeah.
And you have to I start throwing out more and more ideas, which leave less and less to develop. And so the time between it starts taking longer and longer period of time to take that next step on the tightrope,
Mm.
because the tightrope is thinner, and it takes a little more balancing.
Yeah. From that point of view of your process, and like to what Chris was saying about how prolific you are, I'm thinking, in terms of outside of the life that you've got with your family and the day job that you have, when you sit down, you go, okay, I'm gonna create, whether that's for Veilburner or whether you're just, playing for pleasure. I'm wondering, like, how much time do you have just to pick up a guitar and go, I'm just going to play? Or like, mess around with stuff that isn't necessarily going to be for Veilburner? How much at this point that you've been doing this, is it kind of like your time creatively is honed directly into this is for Veilburner?
For me, I don't have any of the side projects, or other projects that Chris has. He's kind of active in different things. So everything that I do is for this project, and I've been able to iron out the process. Since we've done, at this point, um, I've written 9 albums. And 8 is about to be released, but now it's almost like, and it's like I know exactly when I want to sit down to do it, and I just sort of carve out, the time to do it. I have more time, I think, than Chris has traditionally had. See, Chris, I don't have any kids. Chris was raising a stepson, so he has more family. He had more family dynamics throughout the course of the lifespan of the project to consider. And I think you have more extended family to consider than I. I mean, I just have my mom and my wife, whereas Chris has a whole family with kids, and he has both sets of, I'm pretty sure, both sets of parents on either side, to mitigate. So I think I have a little bit more free time than he does. So he's probably the one that has to do more, creative. He like intentionally, he has to block off time,
Yeah.
or it'll, to sit down and write. Um, or else the day will get away from him. Whereas for me, I'm a little more flexible. I don't want to but I don't want to speak out of turn. So Chris, he should probably answer for himself instead of me answering for him.
Well, let me just sort of slightly reframe the question for you, Chris, and give you a chance to answer that. Because I've, from time to time, I talk to people about this, and I'm curious about when you do have a variety of different responsibilities and different things going on in your head. And this is kind of like for myself as well. We can't necessarily just flip a switch and go like, now I'm in creative mode. But on the other hand, I'm sort of aware that there can be a certain kind of like training of the muscle. Whereas, like, if you sort of say to yourself, I'm going to go into this room in this particular mental space and I'm going to create, that you can perhaps train yourself to be more productive, even if you're kind of forcing it up to a point. So, for you personally, in terms of now, and maybe if things have evolved over time, like, how do you make that space for yourself, and how kind of spontaneous can you be in terms of going, I have decided I'm going to create right now, versus sort of needing that mood to strike you?
The spontaneity's less now. When we first started off, it was a lot easier, and I had a lot of stuff written for years, and then I always have fragments. I'm always writing in my phone. So anytime I have a line or something, I even if it's 2 words, I jot it down like a title, just so I don't forget it. It's not hard to make time. It's the forcing. I used to try to force to write. Now I kind of have these cycles. Usually September, it seems to be one. It kind of happened now in October. Like I spit out 3 songs so far. We tracked the first 4 and 9 over the summer, I think it was. So I was able to write 4 of them in a pop. And it seems to be I get a couple songs done. And I used to be able to do that with various projects, but I've been a little more picky in the projects that I'm doing. My live project's still down because the drummer's still trying to rehab from his aortic dissection. So I don't think he'll ever be able to blast again, but I'm trying to get him to do something. But there's only one other project that I'm currently going to be doing. I think it's probably just going to be a one-off. And I basically told him it might be a year, it might be 2 years. I want to get the Veilburner stuff done because it's a little more sacred to me at this point. I kind of hold it in high regard. I want to make sure it's completely focused and I'm not taking any of that energy away from it. And in the past, I didn't feel that way. I could kind of just go from category to category, and now not so much. So I've been trying to just hone in on Veilburner. So it's I get kind of in a trance. The wife knows, she can see it in my eyes. I come upstairs, she wants me to do something, and I'm like not there, and she's like just get it back down, just right. And she gets it. She knows it's not as bad as what it used to be, but she knows now like I don't put as much time to writing. So when I do, she's like, go, go
Yeah.
forth and write.
When she sees the cogs are turning.
Chris,
Yeah, yeah.
I had
She's
no
like,
idea I had no idea you were in the same boat as me on that, because that's exactly what I go through here. Sometimes I'll be upstairs working on something, and my wife will sometimes pick that exact. She'll decide that's the exact moment to come upstairs and start reorganizing a closet right next to my room here, and I'll look at her, and she'll just see this look in my face, kind of like what you're talking about, Chris, and she'll be like, "You all right?" And I'm like, "Yes."
yeah, it's like I'm not there. Yeah. So,
Mhm.
because once, and again, when you're anything creative, you might have only been at it, you feel like it's only 10 minutes, and here it's the whole day. And then you're like, oh, yeah, I forgot. Time doesn't exist when you're in that train of thought. So I've tried to be a little more respectful with that. And, being old, like doing it for so long, I feel like I can get into somewhat of a, hey, I can stop for a moment, even though the gears are turning, let this settle. Because again, I'm compulsive with creativity, and I really tried not to, and I caught myself doing it the other night. I sent him like 20 blurbs on Messenger, like, so this is this, and then 10 minutes later, I'm like, well, 12 of them are non-existent now. But I was just so excited that I'm writing. And he's probably like, Jesus fucking Christ, how do I answer this? He tries. I can tell when he's trying to be extremely like patient and like, well, I don't want to piss him off if I say this is going to suck, or maybe I'm reading it wrong, and it's just he's going to fucking change his mind. So I'm just going to let him blurt this out, and then once he finally comes to a conclusion, I'll answer him.
You're actually right on both accounts. Sometimes I do feel like I got an info dump, and it just takes me a while to let everything that he sent me settle because I don't want to have that knee-jerk reaction. I don't want to say I like it or I don't like it because maybe I don't like it at first and maybe it'll grow on me because I like to say do the same thing with the music. Let it digest. I come up with an idea, I put it down, and then maybe I'll forget about it for a couple weeks and then come back and listen to what I did and be like, what the heck was I doing there? That's crap. And then just throw that idea out. And and sometimes it is like, okay, I want to take the time to be diplomatic in how I respond to this. Again, I'm getting back to that whole, this is his area. I'm a guest in his house. Choose your words carefully. Don't say anything, or don't phrase it in a way that you intend it, and don't like say the wrong thing and realize later that, no, you didn't really mean it to come out that way. I should have taken the time and formulated my words better because, you know, and another thing that's hard when you're communicating via messenger and is when you're communicating via messenger, there's no sense of tone.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you could mean like there's a whole, if you're familiar with the comedy duo Key and Peele, they did a whole sketch on that where Key and Peele were sending text messages back and forth to each other, and the one guy was just sitting in his, like, what was it, Jordan Peele was just sitting in his apartment doing bong hits and just being real laid back about his answers, but like, on the other end you have, Key, who was all amped up. He's reading them as if they're like same wording, but with a different tone. They could seem like, you're challenging someone or you're being threatening. So that's a perfect example of how you want to use emojis more when you're typing, or you want to make sure that the words you choose are going to get, aren't going to come off sounding different than the way you intended them. So I notice we don't go through any of that tension when we're on the phone with each other. When we're on the phone talking, yeah, it's a natural conversation. It's very productive. But on a messenger, it's like, okay, well, what did he mean here, and how do I respond to this?
Yeah, totally. What was the tone of that?
What was the tone of that? It's like there's that whole other layer to it when you're talking via messenger.
Yeah, true.
But I like messenger. I like texting. It's like I hate talking on the phone. And I don't mean I don't like talking to Chris. I just don't like. I'm not a phone person in general. I'm not a phone person in general. I'm not a phone person in general.
Yeah.
I used to have a phone-based job where I would talk to people and they would get. I won't go into that whole thing, but I got shell shocked from talking on the phone from like an old job I used to work where it's like a phone rings. I just dread who's on the other end of it and what they're going to want. So
yeah, I must say I've got a bit of a thing for sending voice notes to people, and some of my friends really don't like the voice notes, and they'll be like, "What, another 5-minute voice note, Tom?" It's like, I can't be bothered having to write a long text message. But maybe I should just give them a call instead. But everyone.
But I like it because I like sending texts and messages because you can choose your words carefully. You can think about everything, how you want to phrase it. Whereas in the moment, you just have to a lot of times go with the first words that pop into your mind, and they may not be the best ones, or you may end up getting tongue-tied and not really express the idea as clearly as you may have wanted to had you had the chance to do it. That's why I like doing the written interviews because I can think about all this stuff before I formulate my answer. But at the same time,
like I remember from our first interviews that we did when we did them via email, like you gave me some very detailed answers. So you obviously had a lot of opportunity to think about what you were going to say.
Whereas right now it might sound like I'm just rambling.
Dave and Chris, thank you so much again for your time. It was great to talk to you, great to catch up. And I love the latest record. As always, I continue to be a huge fan of your work. So as always, I hope it gets a great reception when it comes out. And I'm looking forward to finding out what's going to be next from Veilburner.
Well, thank you so much. It was, it's great. It's great talking to you. Anytime you want to meet up with us and have another conversation, we're totally down for it.